Today I'm going to be painting a fine Georgian gentleman, pictured as he was in 1918. I've always been attracted to these old portraits from that era, the types that you get in national galleries and great ancestral homes. I always loved looking at those pictures when I was young, and I always thought one day I'd like to paint something like that, and so here I am, many years later, trying to recreate that type of grand old portraiture. Let's see if I can manage to do it. So I'm working in oils on a linen canvas. The painting is just about life size, I would say, and what I'm doing here at the moment is just getting a feel for it, just blocking in that first layer of paint, getting rid of the white canvas underneath, so I can start to see the colours and contrasts more clearly. I'm not using any medium at this stage. In fact, I use very little medium at all. But at this stage it's just paint straight from the tube, and I'm quite loosely trying to get a feel for the texture of the cloth of the jacket and waistcoat. Quite a difficult challenge, I realised early on. It had to have that kind of woolen jacket feel to it. So there was going to be, many sort of attempts at working out what was the best way to do this. It's not like everything that I approach there's a fully understood step. I'll do this and that. It's more of a trial and error, and this is what you're watching here. I'm just working out what would be the best way to show that texture. I don't want things to look too laboured and overly detailed. I want to try and work out a way. This is what I'm doing at this point. I'm trying to work out a way to portray the colours, the tones and the texture in the most simple way, in the best way possible to suit the style of the painting. I don't want to do every tiny little bit of detail. I just want to give an impression, and that can often be quite tricky to work out, but it's fun anyway. It's a fun sort of exploration. So all this time here working on that jacket, I'm just trying to get a feel for what are the right brushes to use, what will do it not only best but quickest as well. So you see me picking up various different brushes. I don't worry about anything at this stage because I know I'm going to get it worked out in the end. So I try many different things in different areas, and slowly but surely I keep what's useful and I discard what isn't, and slowly but surely things do come together. Now, having spent some time working on the jacket, that allowed the undercoat on the face to dry sufficiently so that I could move in with the second layer of paint onto the portrait itself. I'm still just focusing on the form really here. My subject is lit from the window there, so he's casting some beautiful shadows across the form of the face, and that's the key to this painting's three-dimensionality really. So I'm focusing primarily on the rich shadow tones at the moment. I'm also wanting to get plenty of paint on there. I want this to be a little bit more painterly. I want to be pushing around quite a bit of that wet paint. I love wet in wet with oils, and that's what I'm doing, and I'm consciously telling myself to use thicker paint. I think it helps. It's certainly the way they did it in the older portraits and that you'll see in the old art galleries, and I think they had something going with that. I think the more paint the better in an oil painting, and particularly one that's trying to look old, like an old Georgian portrait. Now the hair I'm also keeping simple. I don't want to go down the path of too much detail. I'm painting the form of the hair more than individual hairs. I might add some. I mean, I am quite a detailed painter. I'm trying to move away from that, to be honest, and put more emphasis on the earlier stage of the form, getting the form of the hair. And a few detailed hairs I'll put in, but at the end of the day I like it to look three-dimensional, and that has more to do with the light and shadow than it does with little fine details. So I'm letting the brushes do most of the work. You saw me there with a hog hair brush, just scraping it across, and it tends to leave these impressions of hair. It's impressions is what it's all about, not doing every single hair individually. But once I am happy with the feel and the form of the hair, I can add just a few, not too many. It may look like a lot, but really not too many actual little hairs. It only takes a few just to give that impression that the hair is something real. I'm working from dark to light basically on this portrait, and my colour palette consists of burnt umber, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, Windsor yellow, permanent alizarin, cadmium red and a magenta rose. And as I said, the only medium I'm using is a little bit of walnut oil gel by Rublev. I don't use very much of that at all, just a little bit sometimes if I want a little bit more transparency to the colours and maybe a little bit more flow. Sometimes what I'll do to get more flow to the paint is just put a very thin brushed in layer of the gel on the surface first to make it a bit wet. Just a very, very small amount, but it's just enough to make that paint slippery on the surface. If that's required, that's what I do. I'd certainly done that on the hands here. Just like on the face, I'd blocked in the darker tones first, and then after that first layer had dried, I did put a little thin skimming of oil, of the walnut oil gel, over the surface, and then here you see me just putting in the lighter highlight strokes, which can just be tapered off into that oily layer using the pressure of the brush. I'm using quite a lot of broken colour in this hand, in both hands really. What I mean by that is many different colours, slightly different, side by side to each other, just building up a richer surface look. Same thing on the face here, I'm just adding very slight variables to the skin there. Slightly lighter, slightly yellower tones. Again, I just wet that surface with some gel, and now I'm just dabbing in some slightly lighter and yellowy colours. It just brings everything together that little bit more, gives it that more rounded, translucent, skin-like look. and then lighter still just on this edge here, just where the light is just catching a little bit of the cheek there, just a little bit dabbed in on the highlight areas. It's these little touches that can make a big difference in the end. And it's important to me to make this man as handsome and distinguished as possible. And one of the things that's going to help that is his fob watch. And not just any fob watch. You see, this is his actual fob watch, passed down to me through the generations, because the portrait I'm painting is of my great-great-grandfather, John Wilson. It was presented to him in 1918, and this portrait is my personal tribute to him. Of course, I never knew him personally, but I did have some very old photos that showed him. That's the little boy there, that's my father, and that's his grandfather. You can see him there, John Wilson, wearing the very same fob watch that I'm painting. Quite special, I think. It certainly felt very special to hold that watch in my hand and paint it from life for this painting. And then taking a little break from the watch to practice once again, using different brushes, a fan brush this time, just to dab in some little bits of colour. I'm still working on the perfect technique to get that texture of the suit just right. Well, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you very much. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. A few final touches there, just dabbed on with really quite thick paint actually to make the gold chains stand out. A little bit of walnut oil gel and a tiny bit of flake white hue, just to give the impression of the glass within the lens there. You can't just leave it completely blank, so just a little bit just glazed in there. And then as the painting came to an end, all I could think was, I hope I've done you proud, John.